Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that I think we can all relate to. It's cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Basically the mental tug of war we all feel when our beliefs clash with our actions.
Absolutely.
Like say you're a total health nut, but you just can't resist that occasional donut.
Right.
That inner struggle, the wanting to be healthy but indulging in that guilty pleasure. That's dissonance in action.
It is. It is.
So in this deep dive, we're going to uncover the theory, how this tension shapes our decisions, how it plays out in the real world, and even maybe some ways we can become more aware of it in our own lives. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's a fascinating topic, and it's something that I think is really relevant to everybody.
Absolutely.
Because we all experience cognitive dissonance to some degree. It's this mental discomfort that arises when we hold contradictory beliefs, values, or attitudes.
Yeah, and it's not just about feeling conflicted. It's a powerful psychological force, right?
It is, yeah.
Leon Festinger, the psychologist who really pioneered this theory, described it as an internal drive to maintain consistency in our thoughts and our actions.
Right.
And, one of the most famous examples of this is that study he did on a UFO cult back in the 50s.
Right.
They were totally convinced the world was ending on a specific date.
Right, and they had given up everything.
Yeah. They'd sold all their belongings.
They'd quit their jobs.
Everything.
They were all in.
All in. So then when the apocalypse doesn't happen, what do? Did they just admit they were wrong?
No, not at all. In fact, many of them doubled down, became even more convinced of their beliefs.
Wow.
They rationalized that their faith had actually saved the world.
Oh, wow.
Proving how strongly we're driven to reduce this dissonance.
So basically, admitting we're wrong creates such discomfort. Our minds find these elaborate ways to protect our egos.
It does, it does.
So what are our escape routes? What do we do to avoid that discomfort?
Well, Festinger proposed 3 main ways we try to achieve this kind of mental harmony, right?
Yeah.
The first is that we try to change our behavior to align with our beliefs, like quitting smoking if you know it's bad for you.
Right.
Second, we might change our belief,
Oh, interesting.
convincing ourselves that the risks of smoking are exaggerated or not as bad for you as everyone says.
Interesting.
And third, we might add new beliefs to justify our actions. So like a smoker might rationalize that smoking helps them manage stress.
Oh, so it outweighs the risk.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So they're adding new beliefs to kind of justify that action.
So it's almost like our minds are doing these mental gymnastics, right, to make us feel better.
Yeah. It's amazing how the mind works. It's constantly trying to protect us from this discomfort and maintain some sense of internal consistency.
So let's say you buy an expensive gadget. You're so excited about it. Then later you realize, oh, it's not as great as you thought it would be.
Right. Yeah.
How does cognitive dissonance kick in then?
Well, you might experience what's called buyer's remorse.
Uh-huh.
And to ease that dissonance, you might start to convince yourself that you got a good deal. Or you might focus on the features that you do like about the product and downplay the ones you don't like.
Right.
So you're reinterpreting the situation to fit your initial decision.
Even if, deep down, you know you made a mistake.
Exactly.
That's so relatable. It's like when you convince yourself those uncomfortable shoes are actually stylish.
Right. Exactly.
But it goes beyond personal choices, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How did this play out in the wider world, especially with things like advertising and media?
Well, I think that's where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because media outlets, advertisers, even political campaigns often tap into this inherent need that we have for consistency.
Yeah.
Think about selective exposure.
Oh, yeah.
Where we gravitate towards information that confirms our beliefs.
Totally.
Which leads to these echo chambers that we hear so much about.
Oh, absolutely. It's like with social media. We tend to follow people who share our views. Creates this bubble where we're rarely challenged. Makes us more vulnerable to misinformation and manipulation, I would think.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like that saying, you are what you consume.
Right.
But in this case, it's almost more like you consume what you are.
Exactly. And advertisers know this very well. They create these marketing campaigns that trigger a sense of dissonance in us, making us feel like we're missing out, or we need to upgrade our lives to align with a certain image or ideal.
And that's so true. I've definitely fallen for those marketing tactics before.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things like fashion or technology.
Right.
So we've talked about the theory and how it kind of shows up in our daily lives, but where did this research begin? What were some of those early studies that helped solidify this whole concept?
Well, as we mentioned, Leon Festinger was the pioneer.
Yeah.
Beyond the UFO cult study, she conducted lab experiments that demonstrated the power of cognitive dissonance In one classic study, participants had to complete this really boring task.
Uh-huh.
Like they had to turn pegs
Oh,
over and over and over again.
oh my God.
Really tedious stuff. And then they were asked to lie
A lie.
to other participants, telling them it was enjoyable.
Oh, wow.
And some were paid $1 for this lie, while others received $20.
Interesting. So I'm guessing the different payments were a key part of the experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. Because later, when they were asked about their true feelings towards that task, those who had been paid just $1 rated it as more enjoyable than those who had been paid $20.
That's counterintuitive. Why would those who got paid less say they enjoyed it more?
Well, because they experienced more dissonance.
Right.
For the $20 group, the money provided sufficient justification for their lie.
Right.
But for the $1 group, that small reward wasn't enough
Oh.
to resolve the conflict between their actions and their belief that lying is wrong. So to reduce this dissonance, they unconsciously adjusted their attitude towards the task, convincing themselves that it wasn't actually that bad.
That's a powerful demonstration of how our minds work to maintain that internal consistency.
It really is.
It really is.
And this study, along with many others that followed, provided a foundation for understanding how cognitive dissonance influences our perceptions, our attitudes, and our behaviors.
This is all so fascinating, and we've barely scratched the surface. So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore the practical implications of all of this. We'll look at how cognitive dissonance is being studied and used in fields like marketing, decision-making, and even therapy.
Yeah, there are so many different applications. It really is fascinating to see how this one principle
Right.
can be applied in so many different ways.
I'm excited to dive in. See you soon.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. So before we jump to the break, we were talking about those early studies on cognitive dissonance and how they revealed these incredible lengths we go to reconcile those conflicting thoughts and behaviors.
Right. Like convincing ourselves that a totally boring task was actually kind of fun just because we were paid $1 to lie about it.
Yeah.
But how is this being applied in today's world? Is this just fascinating theory, or are there real-world uses for all of this?
Oh, it goes way beyond theory. In fact, marketing and advertising use dissonance to their advantage all the time.
Really?
Think about those limited time offer sales tactics.
Yeah, those get me every time.
Yeah.
Like the fear of missing out creates this urgency that makes me want to buy, even if I don't really need it.
Exactly. That sense of urgency, that's a form of manufactured dissonance. They're creating a conflict
Oh,
between your desire to save money and your fear of missing out on a great deal.
clever, but kind of sneaky. So how else is this playing out in the business world?
Well, consider customer reviews and rating systems. They're everywhere now, and they have a huge influence on our purchasing decisions.
Oh, absolutely. I rely on reviews for everything. Restaurants, hotels, even like which branded toothpaste to buy. But how does cognitive dissonance come into play here?
Well, it can influence both how we write reviews and how we interpret them.
Interesting.
Let's say you buy a product that you had really high hopes for, but it turns out to be just okay. You might experience that buyer's remorse we talked about.
Right, that feeling of, ugh, I shouldn't have spent so much money on this.
Exactly. To ease that dissonance, you might be more likely to write a positive review, focusing on the few things you did like about the product.
Okay.
You're essentially trying to convince yourself and others that you made a good decision.
So not all 5-star reviews are created equal. Some might be fueled by a need to justify a purchase rather than genuine satisfaction.
Exactly. On the flip side, if you have a strong negative experience with a product, you might be more inclined to write a scathing review, even exaggerating the flaws a bit to confirm your belief that you made a bad purchase.
It's like those online arguments that get totally blown out of proportion. Everyone's just digging in their heels to defend their position, no matter what.
That's a great analogy. And this is where things get really interesting when we talk about the design of rating systems themselves.
Okay.
Because research shows that the way ratings are presented can actually influence how we perceive products and make decisions.
So it's not just about the ratings themselves, but how they're displayed and the context surrounding them. That's fascinating.
It is. For example, showing individual ratings alongside the average can sometimes create more dissonance and make it harder for people to form a clear opinion.
Okay.
This is because those individual ratings might be all over the place, conflicting with our own expectations.
Right.
Or with the overall average.
Right. So seeing a mix of glowing 5-star reviews and scathing 1-star reviews could actually make me more hesitant to buy a product? even if the average rating's pretty good.
Exactly, because it introduces more uncertainty.
Yeah.
Makes it harder to reconcile those conflicting pieces of information.
So are there ways to design these systems to be more effective?
Yeah.
To help people make more informed decisions?
Absolutely. Research suggests that offering more granular rating options, like a scale of 1 to 10 instead of just 1 to 5,
Right.
can help people express their opinions more accurately
Makes sense.
and reduce some of that dissonance.
So instead of just like thumbs up or thumbs
Yeah.
down, we get a more nuanced picture of people's experiences.
Exactly. And this can lead to more accurate perceptions of a product's true quality. Another approach is to highlight verified purchases, or to give more weight to reviews from people who have used a product extensively.
That makes sense. It helps to filter out some of the noise and focus on the opinions that are most likely to be genuine and informative.
Precisely. It's all about finding ways to present information in a way that minimizes dissonance and helps people make more confident decisions.
This has been so eye-opening. We've covered so much ground already, from classic experiments to marketing tactics to the design of online rating systems. It's amazing to see how this one psychological principle plays out in so many different areas of our lives.
It really is, and it speaks to the enduring power of Festinger's theory.
We'll be back in a moment to explore even more facets of this theory and how we can become more aware of our own tendencies to reduce dissonance. So we've been talking about cognitive dissonance and how it pops up in everything, like marketing, online reviews, everywhere. It's really clear that this isn't just some, abstract theory. It's part of our everyday lives.
Yeah, definitely. And as we navigate this crazy world, the information overload, those echo chambers on social media, understanding cognitive dissonance is more important than ever.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. We talked about how companies use dissonance, but for us personally, how do we become more aware of our own tendencies to kind of want to reduce dissonance,
Huh.
especially when we're like forming opinions or making decisions?
That is a fantastic question, and researchers are still trying to figure it all out, but there are a few things we can do to become more aware of our own biases and to help us make more informed choices.
Okay, give us the tips. I'm ready.
Okay, well, first, we've got to recognize that we all have biases. Nobody's immune to that. We all want to feel consistent.
Right.
So once we acknowledge that, then we can start to pay attention to how they might be influencing our thoughts and actions.
So it's about being more self-reflective, questioning our assumptions, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Another important strategy is to actually seek out diverse perspectives. Instead of just being around people who agree with us all the time,
Right.
make an effort to engage with people who hold different views.
That can be tough, especially these days. Everything feels so polarized. But I see how it would help break out of those echo chambers for sure.
Yeah, it's not always easy, but it's so important for growth and understanding. And when you run into information that challenges those beliefs, try to approach it with curiosity rather than getting defensive.
It's like remembering that being wrong isn't failing, it's an opportunity to learn and grow.
That's a great way to put it. Also, be critical of the information you're taking in, especially what you see online. Double check those sources. Look for evidence-based claims. Be wary of anything that seems too good to be true or is really playing on your emotions.
That's so important with all the misinformation and fake news. It's just too easy to get caught up in those headlines, or those emotional appeals.
It is. And remember, dissonance works both ways. Just as we might resist info that challenges what we believe, we might also be more likely to accept information that confirms our beliefs, even if it's flawed or misleading.
So be skeptical of everything, even the stuff that we think already aligns with our views.
Precisely. Critical thinking is absolutely key here. And finally, don't be afraid to change your mind. We're constantly learning and evolving. Our beliefs should reflect that.
That's a great point. It's about embracing that growth mindset. Be open to new information.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that certainty isn't always the goal. Sometimes, honestly, the most intellectually honest position is one of curiosity and open-mindedness.
Well, this has been so insightful. We've covered so much, from the origins of cognitive dissonance to marketing and decision-making, and even strategies for managing our own biases.
Yeah, and I think it's really clear that this concept is just going to become more relevant as we navigate this digital age.
Absolutely. So listeners, remember, cognitive dissonance, it's a natural part of being human. We all experience it. By understanding how it works and developing strategies, you can become more informed, discerning, and empowered. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep those minds open.